Today, we have a great show in store for you. My next guest, he's an Army veteran with an
Oh,
engineering, that's right, with an engineering background. He went on to lead into the world of business where he became the CEO of 3 service companies with 9 private equity sponsors and went on to complete 58 acquisitions and facilitated billions of dollars in successful exits. He's an executive coach, a keynote speaker, a mentor and consultant. He heads the chairman group today, where he is the chairman. And the reason we brought him here today, as the best-selling author of the Exit Strategy Playbook and the Private Equity Playbook, which is his latest book. Adam, welcome to the show.
hey, good to be here. Thank you for having me, Bob, and hello to all your listeners out there.
Yeah, it's really great to have you. We're super excited to bring you on today. With as much talk as there is, at least in our industry today, about the private equity play, I thought there was no better person to bring on than yourself as the expert. You've had all these great exits and stuff, but there was a different time before where you were able to achieve this level of success. There was a story behind all this. We like to go back to the story of Adam, find out a little bit about who Adam is. Tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, who inspired you, and what influences you had.
Yeah, sure. So, hey, I grew up in Michigan, suburb of Detroit, back in I'd say my informative years, the late 60s through the decade of the 70s. World was a very different place then. Every house on the block, dad was either a World War II veteran, or a Korean War veteran. My dad was a Navy officer during the Korean War. And so, different era of people, different, this is the era of Leave It to Beaver. There is no internet. There's 5 channels on TV. It's like simple, very simple place. Back then, work ethic started early. I had a paper route, was my first job. I was 12 years old. I was shoveling snow in the winter, raking leaves. It's like that was, if I wanted money, I went out and I earned it and I worked for it. And I don't mind telling you that as I got into my high school years, I knew early I wasn't going straight to college. I was going into the military. Ronald Reagan inspired me. I graduated high school in 1982. Ronald Reagan was commander in chief, and I was drawn to go into the military. And so for those not old enough to really remember the Reagan era, I would tell you, whereas Barack Obama might have sold you a box of hope and on what the future could be, Ronald Reagan sold you on the dream of America as a great place and a place worth fighting for. And so, I went off into the military as a young guy, really with a mind towards education. So I was a ham radio operator in the 60s and 70s as a kid,
Wow.
building Heath kits. I'm building transmitters, antennas, and I'm talking to people all over the world with Morse code and stuff. I was into electronics in an era when there weren't computers yet on everybody's desks. And, that started just as I was getting out of high school. And, and so I went into the military and I took my entrance exams. I qualified for any job in the military based on my technical scores. And so I took the longest technical training the military had. It happened to be the Army, and it happened to be air defense, forward area, radar systems and missile systems, and went to school at NASA at Marshall Space Flight Center, which was the Redstone Arsenal was the military side. Marshall was the civilian side. It's where NASA met the military. It's where all of the German scientists at the end of World War II were moved to create our ballistic, technology, to create the Apollo rockets, to design and build the space shuttles. Rocket City, USA, pretty cool place. And a lot going on. Military for me taught a young man about discipline, teamwork, and leadership. Really foundational base skills. Engineering made me a meticulous planner. Never shoot from the hip. Always have all my boxes laid out. Check them in order. And although the life changes and plans change, the art of learning about how to plan and how to think through, contingencies and what have you. Very methodical in the way that I think, also very useful later on in life. At some point, after the military, I went to work at General Electric, and first as an engineer, later as a manager. Worked my way up through the ranks at GE, was a turnaround guy. Worked for, Jack Welch back in I call it the Camelot
Wow.
era
Yeah.
of GE. Tech doesn't exist yet still. I'd have to say that Steve Jobs has probably either been fired for the first time and is back in his garage, crying over his billions, or, whatever. It's like tech hasn't taken over the world yet. So GE's number one on the Fortune 500 list. Jack is the world's most admired CEO. This company is growing so fast, it's doubling in size every 2.8 years. And so I credit GE with teaching me how to run a business.
Wow.
And Jack, and just the aura of his leadership with how to be a figurehead, in a company that, that could inspire others. I then went from GE. So Jack left. He retired literally September 10th, 2001, the day before 9/11.
Right.
Was Jack's last day. And so, everybody kind of left GE like around that same time. It's like, if you didn't take over for Jack, a bunch of the division heads left to become CEOs of other big companies. I was recruited out and left, just before that all happened. And then I spent 21 years building 3 large national service companies for 9 different private equity firms. I didn't know what private equity was when I first started, out in the world of PE. And, 58 company acquisitions later and $2.5 billion in exits later, I got bored. I was just, after decades of doing this, it's like I needed a new challenge.
Yeah.
I had spent 15 years teaching in the university, level environment in the executive MBA programs of schools, and, enjoyed giving back, was bored running one company at a time, wanted to help as many companies as I could. I just turned 60. I rode a hurricane for my 60th birthday. I was in Cancun, Mexico, the day that Beryl, hit it as like a Cat 3 and rolled through. So that was fun. I turned 60 and I rode a hurricane. I don't know what I'm going to do for 70, but hey, that was pretty good. And, had a lot of fun. As much fun as you can have when a hurricane is slamming into you.
So what year was that? What year was that hurricane?
That just happened. It's just this July 4th.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Hurricane Beryl. Matter of fact, I escaped Cancun then on Saturday. So they were shut down for about a day and very quick getting things back online. And then I flew around the storm to get back to Texas just in time to get hit by the same storm twice.
Yeah.
In 1 week.
Deja vu. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was fun. But, it was, so I started a consulting business, and I dedicated, I'm calling it the last 10 years of my career are going to be spent trying to teach, business owners, entrepreneurs, how to scale, how to get out of the gates, how to scale, how to do M&A, how to exit for top dollar, teach them about private equity and how the private capital world works. And I'm having fun. I work more hours today than I ever did as a CEO. I've got clients all over the globe, a large following now, and it's been a lot of fun. So
no, that's great. Fun. Yeah, no, that's an amazing journey. So, it definitely doesn't just happen overnight, and it's a long, escalating time from the time that you were a young man there in Michigan, got your roots and stuff like that. Were you part of a large family, a good support system? What kind of family did you have? What kind of support did you have from your family that brought you into this?
I tell you, I was raised by the neighborhood. What does that mean? Large Irish Roman Catholic neighborhood street. We had 10 kids in our family growing up, and we weren't the largest number of kids on the street. I think the largest family had 14. So there were 1 million kids running all over the neighborhood. All that mattered in the summertime was, you get up, you leave the house. It's like, where are we going to have lunch and be home for dinner? That was like the 2 rules. But this is before we had to worry about serial killers and, all this other crap. And so kids were just kind of like raised in groups, and And, so, in our world, sports was the center of just about everything. Whatever was in season is what the neighborhood was playing, and, so I mean, I had tennis courts in our backyard. We'd freeze them over in the winter. Hockey was my number one sport. And, it's like, boy, if it's winter, we're playing hockey. If it's fall, we're playing, field hockey, or floor hockey or whatever. And if it's, summer, we're playing baseball. And if it's fall and winter too, we're also playing football, sandlot football. So everything revolved around sports, everything
Yep.
revolved around just, having fun with your friends. And, and generally it was just a different era. You could jump on your bike and ride, up to the store at 10 o'clock at night because you wanted a soda, and you had a quarter. So you went to go get a soda, and it's like different world, different era.
Oh, absolutely. So in high school, what was high school like for you? What if I were to ask maybe, 3 or 4 of your college or your high school classmates, what would they say about you, and who would they say you would become back in those days?
Super smart for sure, but if I enjoyed a subject, I got straight A's. If I really didn't care, I got C's, so it was kind of like,
Yeah.
where was I motivated?
Right.
And, again, sports at the center of everything. But, I fit in with all crowds, so back in those days, you had the jocks and the burnouts
Oh yeah.
called, and
The
I,
smoking crew, right? The
yeah,
smoking
yeah.
pit.
And so it's like, and I fit in with both. I had friends on both sides
Yeah.
of that fence. And so, I would say, geez, I was, at some level, I was a bit of a class clown, smart ass and didn't know when to shut up. And military sure taught me when to shut up really quick. But, I would say that the gift of gab.
Yeah.
Oh, so my grandmother was a vaudeville entertainer back in the era of Al Capone in Chicago. I was born in Chicago, but moved to Michigan early, as a baby still. But grandma was a singer, dancer, entertainer. My dad was a PR executive, and so the gift of being able to speak and articulate a
Yeah.
vision and good command. I had a voracious appetite, reading as a kid.
Yeah.
Again, we didn't have the TV and the video and all the stuff that kids have today. So when you look at me, growing up, definitely I was a voracious reader, and I like to think that the majority of my intelligence, today doesn't come from, I'll say formal school, comes from just the ability to read just volume after volume of books growing up and learn and just be inquisitive. And so, but I'd say that's who I definitely was. Went into the military right out of high school. I joined under the delayed entry program. I knew I
Yep.
was going in the service before I started my senior year of high school. I screwed off so much during my senior year. I think, I got called into the principal's office like 2 weeks before graduation. It's like, Coffey, where the hell you been all year? I've been around, and it's like, well, show up every day for the next 2 weeks. I'll let you graduate. I think I probably skipped half those days, but I still graduated. So I think I was trying to undermine my going into the service, but
Yeah.
that's where I was going. And two, two
Yeah.
weeks, 2 weeks after graduation, I turned 18 in basic training.
Oh
So
wow.
I joined at 16.
Wow.
Parents had to sign permission. And I left, I graduated high school at 17 and turned 18 in boot camp.
Incredible. Yeah, you and I share a similar story with that. I was also part of that 80s Army delayed entry program, but
Yep.
my ASVAB told me, son, you're going to be walking a lot. It said you qualify to be about an
11
infantry
bang bang. Here we
11 bang
come.
bang baby. That's all I qualify for. I took it, put that shovel in my rucksack, and I took that as my skill set out of the military into the plumbing world. So that's been my journey for 35 years. But man, what a great journey for you, where it's just led you into this world of business. And private equity is really a business, or at least a space for just about any business to play in. But I speak for, like, we own it in the trades world today because it's just so prevalent in the trades world as we navigated into the space we're talking about today, which is in the contractors world. So for the book, for the private equity playbook and the exit strategy playbook. I mean, I think when you wrote that first one, it was about what, 5 years ago?
So the first book was the Private Equity Playbook. I wrote it in 2019. Came out in 2019.
Oh,
Actually wrote it in 2018. And then I've had 4 books. So it was Private Equity Playbook first.
yeah,
2019 it came out. 2021 was the Exit Strategy Playbook.
got it. Yeah.
2023 was Empire Builder. I will have a new book coming out next year, but the book that came out this year is the second edition of the Private Equity Playbook. So that book continues to be #1. It's never left the top, call it top 10, but I don't think it's ever left the top 5, in one format or another. It's owned the category private equity for literally the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And I felt it was time to kind of update the numbers, update the story, expand it. And so second edition,
Right.
just came out. And it's funny because this morning, the first edition, which is that one up there, #1 in private equity this morning is the first edition. Second edition's like #7. I'm like, it's the same freaking book, only it's updated and expanded.
Absolutely.
But it's like the world loves that book. And so, hey, I'm not messing with it. It is what it is. But, and I got to tell you, I think as contractors, as business owners, and I think of blue collar trades, and boy, that's my wheelhouse for sure. Guys, trucks, broken stuff, guys, trucks, building things. That's where I spent my entire career. And, but I'll tell you, even to this day, when I teach a seminar, if I have 1,000 business owners and I stick them in a room, I start a 2-day seminar with a basic 10-question multiple choice quiz on private equity. And I'm telling you, to this day, 90% of the room fails miserably.
Absolutely.
First of all, it's not 4 questions, or four answers, it's 5 answers. So the right answer's in there, but with 5, statistically, you can't guess and pass. So you got to know, and I'm asking basic questions that anybody who's worked around private equity should know, and 90% of the room fails. So although we've heard the term and we think we know what private equity is, there's very few people who have a true understanding of what it is and how it works. And this is important because, when I started in private equity long ago, you're talking like $800 million in assets under management and around 1,500 PE firms globally. Today, over $6 trillion in assets under management, 8,000 plus firms, and they're buying 50% of all companies bought and sold on the planet. And as a matter of fact, the reason why your listeners out there have a market with which they can sell their company to, whether they sell it to private equity or not, the fact that the market exists for them to become rich is because the world of private equity exists. And so I think it's fundamentally important that people have a really good working understanding, not into detail level, but just basics. Understand the basics. If you do, then you know what private equity needs, you know how to feed it, and you know how to take from it what you want, which is wealth creation for your family and for your employees, building a great business. And so, I just find that there's still this total lack of understanding.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. And for me, specifically in our industry, when you throw around the term private equity, you get 2 different versions of it. You get one guy that really just has a bad taste in his mouth because maybe private equity came in and they say ruin their business. And then you get that other, business owner that says, my goodness, we couldn't have done it without private equity. Tell me why somebody would say private equity would be bad for business.
So I think, first of all, the only thing we ever hear on the news are negative stories. That's all we hear. We hear crap stories. I wrote the first book really to start educating a generation about private equity because my experience over 20 years is different than what I see on TV.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that every company I built had a really strong culture. Employees were not coddled, but well taken care of. And we had high bars. You don't get a pass. You got to work hard, but you work hard, we take care of you. People loved working at the companies that I built. I could tell you the story. My last company that I ran, when COVID hit, I was owned by Ares Management, one of the largest PE firms, in the world. And, matter of fact, they're the world's largest non-bank lender. And when COVID hit, they literally started a foundation inside every one of their portfolio companies, which was a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
And they seeded it, all of these foundations with 100 grand from their coffers. And the sole purpose was to help our employees who were impacted by COVID. It's like, so you don't hear about that in the news. You hear about, when some evil private equity firm buys something and then sells off pieces and rips it apart and guts America. And what I'll tell you is the company you're talking about probably was 1 inch away from bankruptcy,
Right.
got bought by a distressed asset private equity firm that literally tried to make a go of it and maybe couldn't, and wound up having to do unnatural things. But, end of the day, there are 8,000 plus firms. There are good firms out there. There are bad firms out there, and unfortunately, when you don't know anything about the industry, you don't know how to differentiate between the good and the bad and the ugly. And so when your phone rings, you own a company and you're like, yeah, I'm interested in buying your company. And okay. And you start talking to them without really knowing the difference between good, bad, right partner, wrong partner, good for my employees, bad for my employees. Private equity is a tool. And, just like any other tool, my wood shop's got lots of tools. You got to use the right tool for the right job at the right time. And when you don't, it doesn't work out well. So, unfortunately, there's horror stories, there's great stories. We don't ever hear about the great stories. We only hear about the horror stories.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. But that being said, so with so many small businesses out there, I see that the majority of them really are not built to even sell. I see that the majority of them are not even built to even qualify for private equity to begin with. So if you're a small business owner, say you're in that, under $5 million category, what would you say you need to start focusing on to really, if you really want to get to a part in life where you can even take part in an exit, what would you say would be the thing that you would suggest?
Yeah, so here's some statistics. There's 34 million small companies in the US, and it represents 99.9% of all companies in the US, and they collectively employ 50% of the country's workforce. SBA defines small business as 500 employees or less. So you can be pretty damn big and still be considered a small company
Right.
as far as the government's concerned. But, only 7% of those companies ever get to $1 million in revenue, and only 4% of those ever get to 10 million in revenue. So success is rare. Only 40% are profitable. So I'll start by telling you that revenue doesn't really matter. Nobody
Right.
gives a damn about revenue. We give a damn about earnings.
Right.
To be $100 million company that earns $5 million a year, I'd rather be a $20 million company that earns $5 million a year. I'm a lot more valuable.
Right.
So it's not about size, guys, it's about profitability. It's about business mix. My third book was called Empire Builder, which came out about a year ago. And that's the roadmap. How do I get out of the gates? How do I pick an industry that meets the right kind of dynamics? And so you mentioned plumbing. Plumbing's a good industry. There's a lot of private equity interest and activity, but believe it or not, there's actually even better industries out there than plumbing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So one of the issues with plumbing is while it's recurring revenue, meaning there's enough houses out there and enough toilets clogging and people that need me that my phone's going to keep ringing, but it's not 100% contracted revenue. So I think about like a pest control company where I sign a service contract, and every month I hit all my clients credit cards, and 3 days after the first of the month, my revenue's in the bank. And when I find a new customer, it adds on to the pile of old customers I've already got. So what kind of business do I run? What's the business mix? If I'm a plumbing company that does nothing but new construction, I'm not worth as much as a plumbing company that does a lot of, call it emergency repair and repair work and retail work. Why is that? Because new construction is cyclical. New construction, when interest rates go up, housing starts come down, and all of a sudden plumbing company loses a bunch of revenue because they were focused primarily on, new construction. So there are different kinds of businesses with different kinds of customers, different mix. I might be commercial, I might be residentially focused, I may be on both sides of the house. There's a lot of nuances. And so what I tell people is, run a good company. It's
Yeah.
not about revenue, it's about profitability. So, can we price our products and services high enough to generate a good profit? If we can, and I use this thing I call the 30-20-10 rule. I'm looking for at least 30+% gross profit margins. I want less than 20% SG&A cost, and I want minimum of making 10 cents on a dollar. Below 10 cents on a dollar, most buyers would see me as a dog with fleas. It's like I'm a low margin business. I haven't learned how to be profitable, and I'm like one step away from the grave. So it's not revenue and size. It's about profitability. It's about running a good business. It's about being a leader, in my area of expertise, in my markets. And, it's like good, buyers want to buy good companies run by good people that have good fundamentals, and so the better we do at running a basic, at the basic blocking and tackling in our business, the more profitable we are, then the better story that we can tell, and the more consistent those earnings are, the more we're going to be rewarded with price. So again, it's not about volume,
Right.
it's about profit.
Right. And so out of those 58 acquisitions, you used that 30, that same principle, that those rules when you were looking at buying those companies and acquiring them.
Sure. And those are minimum, right? So, hey, I'd like a 45% gross profit margin and a 15%, SG&A, and I'd like a much higher, a 30% profit, but the basics say below 10%, is a dog with fleas. And so I use that for troubleshooting companies too. So when I'm looking at a business, it's like, if gross profit's less than 30%, I don't need to worry about the rest. Right now, I got to focus on price, and I got to focus on lowering my cost of servicing revenue. And once I'm over 30%, now I can look at SG&A, sales, general administrative expense. So it's my office, my back office people, it's my cost of customer acquisition. If I'm over 20%, I'm just not doing well. If I am over 20%, my gross profit better be higher, because the one thing I can't compromise on is profitability. It's like, in order to be an ongoing concern, I got to make money. I can't have a good year this year and suck next year, and good the year after and suck the next year. It's like, you see that kind of inconsistency, and the buyers will reward you with either I'm not interested or very low price. It's like, we got to show consistent growth in revenue, in earnings. As we get bigger, we should be becoming more profitable. You think about, so my last company was an HVAC company. I had 1,900 service technicians, out there in trucks driving around. If I'm replacing 8% of my fleet every year, buying 100+ vehicles or 200 vehicles, I get a lot better deal than if I'm a small contractor who's replacing one truck a year and going to my local dealership. I'm buying factory direct, and I'm part of a corporate program, I'm getting better pricing. If I'm a flooring company and I've got, 1,900 guys, I'm buying more product. I'm getting more product. I'm buying more product. I'm getting better volume pricing. Everything is about learning how to run, and be profitable at a small scale, so that when I get bigger, I become more profitable. And, a lot of people, I can't tell you how many times entrepreneurs have told me, you know what, Adam, I'll figure out how to get profitable when I'm bigger. And I'm like, no, wrong answer. It's like, I do not want to scale a company. I do not want to grow a company. For guys in trucks, plumbers, HVAC, electricians, I think about revenue per truck. I think about my profitability per truck. I think about my costs per truck. I think about, if I can't make, so recently, a well-known billionaire reached out to me. Is like, Adam, come back, run a fourth company, and here's a company. And it's like, everybody in America knows this company and it's worth saving. I'm like, you're absolutely right. It's worth saving. Well, how are you going to fix it when 4 other CEOs haven't been able to fix it in 5 years? And I said, my problem is they're trying to manage it from the top down. They're looking at 6,000 trucks out there on the road, and they're trying to find global hunger fix. And I'm like, I don't need to fix 6,000 trucks. I need to fix one.
Fix one. Yeah.
Can I make one truck profitable? how do service calls come in? How do they get dispatched? How do I route my technicians? How do I replenish their truck stock? How do I know what stock to have on the trucks? And I think about high value work, low value work. For a plumber, I want them on a customer location doing plumbing, and doing plumbing crap and making stuff work, because that's where their value is. I don't want them driving. I don't want them filling out paperwork. I don't want them chasing parts, because all that is low value work, and that low value work will change the profitability of your company. So how do I automate it? How do I eliminate it? How do I work around, if something needs to be done, but I want it, I don't want my $60 an hour plumber to be out there doing that. I want a $15 an hour shop hand, doing that. It's like, how do I structure my business? If I can make one truck work and make one truck profitable, well, then I've taught myself how to scale.
Yeah.
Now I go for the Happy Meal effect. Okay. If I go to any McDonald's anywhere in the United States and order a Happy Meal, I get the same red box with the same yellow handles. I open it up. I got apple slices that were packaged 100 years ago. I got a cardboard hamburger and a yellow wrapper if it's got cheese. It's like, I know exactly what I'm going to get, and so I need to have consistency in delivery, and I need to have my unit level economics working. And in a plumbing business, my unit level economics are one truck.
Right.
I've got the cost of the truck. I've got the cost of the technician. I've got the training, the parts, the benefits, the salary, everything that goes with that guy. They have to be able to generate enough revenue to not only pay all that cost, but generate enough excess gross profit for me to pay for my overhead, me to pay for myself, because I'm the boat anchor, back at the home office. And I got to be able to drive enough profit to the bottom line in order to make this business feasibly work. And if I can do that on one truck, now I know the magic and the secret formula. Now I take, how many trucks do I need on the road to generate $1 million in revenue? What are my costs associated with that, those trucks, and then how many does it take to generate 10 million in revenue? And if I can master these basic steps of scaling, then now I'm ready to get big time, and go big places. Those 58 companies that I bought, on average, the entrepreneur that ran it, anal retentive control freaks. That's what they had to be in order to get out of the gates and to be successful, to beat the odds. But they topped out around 20 to 30 million in revenue. And they're like, I got no more bandwidth. I can't get any bigger. And then Adam swoops in, buys 20 of them, puts them together, and takes them someplace where they've never been before. And the difference is because I've learned how to go from managing minutia to managing process.
Right.
And hiring good people and empowering them and letting them run. And so, a lot of magic that goes into it, but really when you break it down, everything is simple.
Yeah.
It's the basics, getting the basics right.
So when you're looking at like those, and I'm just going to use 5 million as a benchmark as a small company in our space.
Sure.
And just say for a guy like that's looking to maybe play in the space of private equity, is joining a platform company probably his best avenue, or is he better off maybe considering just being a roll up into where he can,
So let's play a quick game. If I've got 5 million in revenue, how many trucks do I got on the road?
You're typically going to have for somebody that size, you're probably going to have between 10 and 12 trucks on the road.
Okay. So I'm running 450 to 500,000 revenue per truck. Okay. What's my profitability?
You're hoping to probably get around 25%.
Okay. So I'm 25%. So on 5 million in revenue, at 25%, I'm over $1 million in EBITDA, over $1 million in earnings, and because my capital expenditures are relatively low, I do got to buy trucks and some tools, but I get 7-8 years out of a truck, and I don't have factories with big machines that are cranking stuff out. It's like my capital expenditure is fairly low. So I've got really good free cash flow conversion. So I'm generating $1.2 million, in earnings, and I probably got $1 million, of that's free cash flow. So at $1 million in size, I'm too small for what I call a traditional private equity firm to be my buyer. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, I'm not too small to find a buyer. At $1 million of profitability on 5 million of revenue, $1 million plus, it's like, I'm gonna have no problem selling the business. But when I look at who the potential buyer is for that company, what I know that people may not know if they haven't read my books is that the real world of private equity. So the real world, what does that mean? That means a traditional firm that raises a fund that has many limited partners as investors who are writing checks to become an investor in a fund. The fund has a 10-year life. It has to deploy its capital in the first 5 to 6 years. It's going to spend about 6 to 8% of its fund size in equity in one company, never more than 12. It's going to own 8 to 16 companies before it's done, investing all its money. And it's got 5 years to improve these companies and sell them. That smallest level of PE firm is buying companies that have at least 3 million in EBITDA
Right.
or earnings. And so at $1 million, I'm too small. I may sell to someone who says that they're a private equity firm. They may
Right.
be modeled like a private equity firm, but what they probably are is a few people who were very successful, probably worked at a bigger firm once upon a time, or they were a CEO like me and they started their own private fund, and they're small. They're investing out of something that's 50 million in size, 100 million in size, and they'll buy that $1 million company all day long, and they'd love to. But the real world private equity kind of starts at 4 million. The
Yeah.
class of buyer that I'm going to get at that size where I could legitimately become a platform, very different than the level of buyer who buys me at $1 million as a platform. So I'm probably better off being an add-on acquisition to a bigger company. So a strategic buyer, which is a company buying my company, they may be backed by private equity, which is great because I could roll over a portion of my proceeds into that company, ride their coattails as they buy 10 more, and then get a second bite of the apple. And the second bite of the apple may be bigger than the first one I got when I sold my company in the first place. And I'm probably going to get a better caliber buyer, more resources to bring to bear. And so I'd say if I'm $1 million in earnings, I probably am better off joining a larger strategic company owned by private equity rather than selling directly to somebody that's disguised themselves as a private equity firm that's buying companies that small, because it's a small firm that probably doesn't. I may find good buyers. I'm not saying they're all bad. There are good and bad everywhere.
Right.
But they're probably resource constrained. And if I'm the platform at $1 million, I've got a slow trajectory to try to get up to what I'll call is the next logical exit point. And so I like to see entrepreneurs go for one of two exits. So I want to build that plumbing company to either get 4 million in earnings and then sell, or I want to build it to 10 million in earnings and then sell. Never more, never more than that do I want to own the company 100%. I definitely want to take chips off the table, diversify my own worth, net wealth, and my net worth, and get chips off the table in a very volatile world that we're living in. Stay as a minority shareholder now in my company and keep rolling forward with a private equity sponsor, riding shotgun as my partner, my majority shareholder. So I'm looking for 4 or 10 great exit points. Plumbing company, 4 million. Maybe I'm going to sell it for 8 times, 32 million. Maybe I'm going to get to 10 million. I'm going to sell it for 12 times, 120 million, and it's like, these are two different exits. Would you rather sell for 40? 32 to 40, would you rather sell for about 120? If one of those two numbers excites you a lot more than the other, then maybe you double down and keep on building till you get up to the size to where that kind of number could happen. And so if I'm smaller than that, I'm going to get a lower multiple at exit. Never a bad thing. Maybe I'm content with that smaller payday, and I join, a strategic buyer as an add-on acquisition. They buy 10 more, I get another payday. Life is good. It's like the one thing I want you to think about, though, for your listeners is, don't think of selling your company as a one and done event. Don't think of your exit as the only exit. If you're 70, I get it. You can think that way, but you can sell your business at 40, sell it again at 45, sell it again at 50, sell it again at 55. By the time you're 60, you could have 4 or 5 exits, over that last 20 years of your life, if you play your cards right. My personal record selling the same company 5 times in 13 years.
That's incredible. Yeah. So that's really good advice. Really, really good advice. Now, as we've taken your book and we've niched it down into more of my specific industry. Let's take it back to a wider, broader niche, and probably more why you wrote the book, because probably didn't write it for, just us plumbers and HVAC contractors and electricians out there, but you opened it up to everybody in the private equity space that wants to play in this. And you've used the pseudonym, Josh and Rose. Who is Josh and Rose in your book?
So Josh, who is the namesake, he's my eldest son. And he actually, believe it or not, is the CTO now of a private equity backed portfolio company owned by the world's largest tech investor, Tomo Bravo. And so he's going to eclipse me in terms of net worth and wealth and all that good stuff. But Josh is, I'll call it the quintessential plumber, who started a business and then over decades, expanded it, grew it, took his risks along the way. And now he's got, 100 trucks on the road, and he's a 5-state company. So he's an entrepreneur who worked a career and is now looking to think about exiting. Private equity's calling him on the phone. What is it? How does it work? What should I think about? What questions should I be asking? And trying to figure out, how do I figure out a good firm from a bad firm? And is this a path that I might like to pursue? Rose is my youngest daughter, and Rose is me. I was the first original Rose. So Rose is the Fortune 500 transitioning, I'll call it quintessential middle manager. General manager, there's 1,000 general managers in a Fortune 500 company with 400,000 employees. And Rose is working her way up the ladder. As a GM, she's earning a really good living. And several $100,000 a year in salary, add in stock and what have you. She's on her path to millionaire for sure, if not already. And her phone's ringing, and it's recruiters. And recruiters are trying to find the next CEO, or COO or CFO, of a middle market private equity backed company. So she works at a company. I worked at GE. I'm working my way up the ladder. I'm a mid-level manager, with a bullet, growth, young kid doing really well, top 5% of GE every year for 10 years, and it's like, okay, do I stay in the comfort of my Fortune 500, kind of lane that I'm in, or do I take a chance and go out and run a much smaller company that's backed by this thing called private equity? What might that look like? And so Rose is that transitioning Fortune 500. And Josh and Rose come at it from different angles, but by the middle of the book, they have now become one person, because Josh has sold his company to private equity. Rose has left the comfort of the Fortune 500 world and has taken the job. And now they've melded into, I'm now the CEO of a PE-backed portfolio company. What can I expect? What does that journey look like? How do I get prepared to play the game? And why would I want to do that? And so for Rose, she's not the owner. She didn't start as an owner. She wasn't an entrepreneur. She never started nothing. She finds herself as a CEO for the first time, running a company somebody else built, and she has a path to generational wealth, making a lot of money. Josh monetized the company at the first exit, has generational wealth, but now he's rolling over, going for a second bite of the apples, partnered with private equity, and they both have now come together. They're minority shareholders, they're minority owners, of this middle market PE-backed adventure, and now what does the path look like going forward? So that's who those two avatars are.
Yeah, which I think is amazing, because, you can take two completely different mindsets there and give them both the same avenue to generational wealth. It's just really a mindset and a skill set. And it just really depends on, you don't have to be a visionary owner to be wealthy or create generational wealth in the space of private equity. I think your book proves that.
Yeah, well, and I think you don't even have to be the smartest guy in any room either, right? So it's like you can be a really good plumber that knows plumbers, that knows trucks, and knows how to make a plumbing company work. You know about customer service. You've learned about accounting and all these things as your business has grown over the years, and you've had support in areas where you're weak. But but you'd be shocked and surprised at the kind of wealth that people can create in the world of private equity.
Yeah.
And what we do is we build teams of people. So I was an operator. I was a guy in a truck. I started my career after the military. I was a technician in a truck. I fixed CAT scanners and MRIs in hospitals. I was an engineer, but I was essentially a fancy service technician, a guy in a truck.
Yeah.
And I held every job you can hold on an org chart. But if I go into a company today and someone said, Adam, come be a CEO, I'd say, I'm an operator. I know guys in trucks. I know culture. I know how to motivate people. I know customer service. I'm not a numbers guy. Over the years and decades, I certainly learned my way around a balance sheet and an income statement, but I want good, solid financial planning and analysis. I'm going to partner with and make sure I've got a CFO who's really strong, who can be my eyes and let numbers speak to me so that I can translate what the numbers are telling me into operational excellence, And so it's like, we can surround ourselves with experts. We can fill in our own gaps. We don't have to be the smartest people in every room on every subject. And so I think a common mistake I see entrepreneurs make when they do find success, I call it the accidental, arrogance of success. They've arrived, they've hit their ceiling, got a great life, they're wealthy, at some degree, but now they forget that they can still learn, and they don't realize that they don't have to be the expert at everything. And before you know it, they stunt their own growth. So a lot of opportunities for regular, everyday people to generate massive amounts of wealth. Wealth does not come through being a W-2 employee for somebody else. Wealth comes through starting a business, building a business, buying a business, and growing it, exiting, learning how to manipulate private equity, get multiple bites of the apple as that company's getting bigger, taking good chunks of money out, chips off the table every time, and playing with house money on the next round. And, people that truly learn all of these different facets are those who generally succeed at the highest levels, when working or partnering with private equity.
Yeah, no, that's all really, really great advice. So we're coming close to the end of the show here, and I kind of want to, find a way to meet common ground with some of the executives out there that want to be able to reach out and connect with you. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing with this, mentor program that you have, and with this chairman group that you had today. What do you got going on with that?
Yeah, so I have three kind of customers. I work with private equity firms. I help them evaluate investments. I help them by coaching their CEOs and their leadership teams in the companies that they buy. I work with 68 founders. 38 of them are in a peer group called the Chairman Group. I run that one with my partner, JT Fox, and he and I provide coaching, one-on-one coaching, group events, mentoring, of this, but it's more of a peer group style. So less one-on-one, more peer group. I work with 30 founders so 38 in the peer group, 30 founders one-on-one. It's just me and them. It's coaching, so it's one-on-one coaching, 2 sessions a week, 4 sessions a week. And then I teach. I still write books. I teach seminars globally. And so I those are the three, call it customer verticals that I'm serving. It's private equity, it's founders, I'm writing books, I'm teaching seminars. And so I put those 3 things together. Best way to contact me, reach out to me, is LinkedIn. Believe it or not, there's fake Adam Coffeys on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook or Instagram. There's fake Adam Coffeys there. I guess you've arrived when there are fake people.
Yeah.
But they're trying to monetize you and take money from you. So only believe in verified, profiles. I'm on LinkedIn. Why am I on LinkedIn? Because there's 840 million business people on LinkedIn, and that's my client base. My client base is not Instagram or TikTok or any of the other platforms. So you'll find me on LinkedIn. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. You get me. People who reach out to me, they get responded to by me. I don't have a team of people crawling around in my social media accounts. So reach out on LinkedIn, and that's how you find me.
Great. Well, I'll put in the show notes. I'll have all your contact information. I'll have ways to reach you through your website, how they get your book, your latest book that you're promoting today. With that, what's the biggest message that you want to end the show with about your newest book, and how would that, what should the readers really expect from this book compared to your original book
So
from
yeah,
the original one?
so the private equity playbook, private equity buys and sells and finances more than 50% of all business transactions on the planet. If you don't understand it, if you can't pass, you don't think a basic 10-question multiple choice quiz, then you need to learn about this economic force. 6 trillion in assets under management. If it was a country, it would be the 3rd largest GDP on the planet, behind China and the US. And so, you need to understand how this works because it's impacting your industry every day. And once you get a basic understanding of how it works, then you learn how the game is played and you can manipulate what its needs are in order to take advantage of it, feed it what it needs, which is returns for its shareholders, in order to get what you want, which is money to expand, loans and or create wealth. So, it's the biggest economic force on the planet that isn't a country. And it's the biggest buyer of businesses. And over the next, decade, there's going to be the largest wealth transfer in human history as baby boomers like you and I, age out and our companies turn over hands to the next generation. So, we don't have a lot of time left either. We need to learn how this thing works because it's created the market with which wealth is generated for us.
Yeah. Wow. Well, what an amazing book. What an amazing guest that you've been today. I can't thank you enough for joining us today. My audience is way smarter because of it. And I can't wait for them to get to know you and get to, read your books and reach out to you. Thanks for joining us today, Adam.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for having me. And hello to all your listeners again out there. Thank you for listening.
Awesome. Great show.